Hello and welcome to the Treasury Talent Podcast. I'm your host, Simon Lynch. Today I'm joined by one of my colleagues, Joe Grabowski. I really wanted to get Joe on today to help you get to understand Treasury and why he's joined the business, what attracted him to the business, so that you can understand as well from your side what it is that we do and how we do it differently to everyone else that you may have come across before. So look forward to chatting with Joe today. Hey Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks a lot, Simon. Thanks for having me.
Just wanted to chat through today to get a better understanding of what it was that drew you to Treasury Talent. So perhaps the first question I'll ask is, what were the main reasons you joined Treasury Talent?
Yeah, the couple of different reasons here. Obviously you and I got introduced through a mutual contact, and to be honest, the first time that we talked, just some red flags popped up. Whenever you have a guy from the other side of the world who's talking to you about an industry you know nothing about, it tends to, there's some due diligence that needs to be done. But really, the more I learned about you, the more I got to know you, how genuine you are, and then the knowledge that you have just of the industry overall and the offering that you have, how specific and how niche we are in Treasury, or how niche you were at the time in Treasury, and just the opportunity that lied or was in front of you in the US is really just encapsulates everything that attracted me to come to work with you.
Which is part of the reason why I guess I was in the market to get someone and started chatting to you, is I just couldn't believe that there was no one in the US who actually supported the Treasury community in the way that we specialise. But more importantly, I just couldn't believe that clients out there were taking 6 months or 9 months, or in some cases not even filling Treasury jobs because their internal teams weren't able to find these people. So it drew me to want to get someone on the ground in the US like yourself. What does that mean then? What appealed to you about the Treasury Talent model?
Really the thing that attracted me most about the model is just that your model is based around relationships. I've been around the recruiting space for about 14 years now, mostly in the tech side, a little bit in healthcare. And I've recruited, I've led teams, I've driven KPIs and metrics, and it almost became, I don't want to say self-loathing, but it was a situation where you realize that most recruiting companies look at interactions with people or job seekers just simply as numbers. You're checking a box. It's make as many calls as you can in a day. Don't worry about the relationship. Just find the people who could potentially be a fit, worry about them. The rest don't matter. And really what I love about your model is every relationship that we have in the Treasury space is something that we're learning. We're focused on the relationships. We're really focused on helping people, whether it's immediately 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line. It's really focused around the relationship piece, and recruiting and hiring in itself is a relationship business, and that's what really resonated with me.
And I think that's the thing that a lot of internal recruiters don't get within the Treasury space, is you've just got to get to know these people. They are very niche in what they do, very specialised. And if you want to just try and find them when you need them, it's really hard to do that. So yeah, I can see why they're not being successful. Now, you've been with me for 6 months, Joe. How have you found that those first 6 months? Was it as you expected?
It was, it was every bit and more. And I mean that in any way that you can take it, really. It's, we've had our challenges along the way, and we've worked together to overcome those. Nothing that we couldn't work through together, but it's just the journey. And that was, again, going back to one of the reasons why I would have joined, is just the journey. This is, you're scratching the surface on something that has so much potential in the US, and that potential is really coming to fruition, and we're working at it each and every day. And in that regard, it's absolutely been as expected, and actually exceeded expectations, just because I'm learning a new skill set. I get to work with you. I know this is kind of goofy with you being my boss, but definitely have become a mentor in a very short amount of time, and you've been excellent in teaching me. And one of the biggest surprises is just getting to interact with Treasury professionals each and every day. As I mentioned, I have more of a background in IT recruiting, where they're not going to give you the time of day if you don't know what they do. Treasury professionals, everyone kind of has a different entry point. Nobody really goes to school for it in the US, so they all have that learning curve, and most people are empathetic to the guy who's trying to learn the ropes. And that's actually exceeded expectations too. It's just not knowing what you're getting into with a new base of job seekers. Everyone's been extremely personable, very helpful in helping me find my way in the Treasury space. So yeah, it's been a great ride.
It's funny you say that, because I think like Treasury folks generally are great to deal with. Like they're well educated, they're generally speaking nice people, and it's definitely a very different recruitment environment to like an IT or some of those generalist sort of areas, isn't it?
It definitely is. It's like I said, you're dealing with someone who has to be a strategic partner to the business, and with IT, maybe not everyone's client facing or business facing, so they may not necessarily have they may not be as personable or open to communicating like Treasury professionals are. Plus IT, they've mostly gone to school for all of this, and if you haven't, then you just kind of it's like you're speaking two different languages. As we're Treasury, again, there's been that learning curve, and they're client facing and business facing each and every day. So it's just been a pleasure.
Now you're in the Treasury ecosystem, how do you think that the model that we're trying to roll out really helps clients to find the candidates that they can't find?
Yeah, it's really interesting when you focus on relationships and doing right by people. It builds trust. It builds, I don't want to say allegiance, but you're looked at as an expert in the space because this is all we focus on each and every day. So I have people who are asking me about jobs that have not actually applied to the jobs because they want to know who we know over there. They want to know what we know about the job and whether or not it's worth them pursuing. So when you focus on relationships and when you focus on truly trying to help people in their search, ultimately we become the biggest ally for clients, but we also become an ally for job seekers at the same time. And I think when you have that working in harmony, it's just going to tap into an entirely new talent pool that most recruiters aren't going to have access to.
I just want to touch on that a little bit, Joe, because the US market for me is very different to what I'm used to in other markets that I work in, that people seem to have a very transactional view of recruitment, in that they want to see a job ad, they want to apply to the job ad, and then they want to find out whether they get the job or not. What we've really done is turn that on its head, and we're getting to know people and what they want, and then bringing jobs to people. How can we get across to the candidates better the way that we work and how it will benefit them?
Yeah, so absolutely. With any good job search, the way that I advise people is, sure, you go find the job, you're going to apply to it, but you have to follow up. And when you have a full-time job, that turns a molehill into a mountain, essentially, because now you have to become a LinkedIn expert, figure out who the decision makers are. You have to have networking conversations on top of working 40 plus hours a week. We're doing all of that work for you on the back end. We're developing those relationships because of the notoriety that you have in the industry and all the work that you've done up until this point. So we're able to provide a different perspective, and we understand skill sets and what skill sets are transferable into different organizations or into different roles. So it's really just a very unique perspective in that way. And the more I've learned about it, again, going back to your previous question, was it as expected? That's been one of the biggest surprises for me, is just how receptive job seekers are to this.
Now, a big part of what we do in giving back to the community and providing value is the podcast. I guess I have my view of what it is. What would you say to people who haven't listened to the podcast around what the benefits are?
Yeah, the benefits, number one, you're learning about the Treasury space, and you kind of get to understand each person's journey. Whether it's from where they entered to how they got to where they are now, and that career path. There's a lot of sage advice, a lot of great advice there, just because everyone does have a different path, and a lot of it's about taking risks and maybe being in a situation where you're not sure if you should take that jump, but you do, and then usually it pays off, because along with great risk, there is great reward. And I'm in recruiting because I love talking to people and learning about other people. So the podcast has been invaluable for me there. Plus you're gaining industry knowledge that you're not going to find on any kind of conference or panel conversation either. This is getting to know people up close and personal, so to speak.
And it's interesting because I find everyone's journey is so different, and there isn't one right way within Treasury. And the podcast really is just putting it out there that there are many ways to skin the cat, so to speak, and get to the treasurer role. And it's great to hear all of those people's journeys and learn something different from each person. But it's amazing the common themes that come out through the podcast around, networking and mentors and, getting out of your comfort zone. There's a whole lot of things in there, isn't there, that just make you think, actually, I need to do that a lot more. And even classic would be, I talk to treasurers and they haven't really networked throughout their career because they've been in the same job for 10 years or 15 years. And then they find themselves in a position where they're out of a role and they've got to start networking again. So lots of different themes that come through like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're speaking to the cream of the crop in terms of the podcast. And those are the people who have made the effort. They found that balance between keeping that nose to the grindstone the entire time, but still understanding the value of having a strong network, building relationships. It's the exact same thing that you and I are doing every day. And sometimes it's almost like talking to recruiting professionals or listening to recruiting professionals, I guess, with just the amount of emphasis that's put around networking, relationships, and again, just jumping into any challenge with both feet and seeing where you land, opposed to saying, nope, that's not for me, I know I won't be successful. So it's just been really tremendous to hear and basically to hear each person's story, but then you'll come in with industry knowledge too. You're speaking with the different consulting companies who have insight around what's going on with the coronavirus right now, if we were to go that route, or the volatility in the markets right now. It's it's all over the map, but it's informational, and if nothing else, it's entertaining. I haven't found one episode that hasn't been a good use of my time, to be perfectly honest with you.
Now, on top of the podcast, we obviously put a lot of information out there via the social media channels, particularly LinkedIn. I get a lot of people saying, why do we share so much? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think we share so much because we know so much. And I don't mean to say that in a pompous or an arrogant way. It's just we're having these conversations each and every day. We're gaining market knowledge. We're gaining market intel as we have these conversations, and we're learning about people's stories. So as you hear these commonalities, or as you're hearing themes in these conversations, it's easy to relate to other individuals and maybe even provide guidance in their careers around, hey, not using any specific names, but have you thought about this? Or just giving people options, opposed to that transactional mindset where it's more of a, what can you do for me? If you can't do anything for me, then you're of no use to me. For us, we're building the Treasury community, and this podcast is a perfect example of that. And basically the content and the information that we're putting out on LinkedIn and otherwise is just an extension of that.
In terms of the near term, Joe, what would be your biggest goals in the next 6 months, 12 months, in terms of what we're going to do with Treasury Talent?
6 to 12 months. I know a lot of the legwork has been done in California. So, as of the first of the year, we've absolutely expanded into 45 additional markets. So we're very heavily involved in that. I would like to have a good grasp on at least 20 of those markets. And by good grasp, I mean, they know who we are. We have the relationships in place. This is the stuff that we're working at each and every day, but I think that'll be a pretty good litmus test as we expand outside of California, how well are we known, and basically what's our success look like? I mean, that's essentially how I'm judging myself. Is you're going to have the wins that we can actually put on the board. You're going to have the tangible, both the tangible and intangible. And tangible for me is definitely going to be that representation across at least 20 of those 45 markets.
What's been the biggest surprise for you since joining the Treasury community?
I have to go back to just how friendly and how personable people are. You're dealing with super, super smart individuals, very talented individuals, just how warm and welcoming people are to actually understand the value that we bring and look to us for guidance in a very short amount of time, and just to have built that credibility to the point where we have people coming to us and it's not looked at as just another recruiter. They're truly focused on building relationships and looking to how they can help us, how we can help them. I mean, it's truly a community more so than an industry, I would say.
Any words of advice for the Treasury community around their careers?
it's a career jungle gym, not necessarily a career ladder. So what that means is, you know, maybe that next role for you, if you're an analyst, maybe it's moving to an analyst role because there's a path to a treasury manager or a treasury director from there. Just keep your eyes open. You know, I think one of the common themes that I have in conversations with job seekers is it's more focused around the scope and the responsibilities more so than the title, because that title is going to look different and those scopes and responsibilities are going to look different in each organization. So just remain open to conversations, learn as much as you can during those conversations to really make the best career decision for you. And don't be afraid to take risks. I know it's a risk-averse industry for the most part, but when it comes to your own career, don't be afraid to take that risk, because usually there's a pretty good reward on the other side.
And I think the key that I will just say for people is reach out to Joe, reach out to Scotty, to Kushal. You know, these guys need to chat to you about, you know, your aspirations, what it is that you want, so that they can then bring the roles to you moving forward. What about words of advice for those that are recruiting into their teams, Joe?
Be open to new ideas. You know, I think not just if it's through us, yes, we're changing the way that recruiting is done. Recruiting and hiring is done with our focus on relationships. Just be open to new ideas. You know, just because someone is only 75% of the way there on paper, maybe they're not a resume writer. So have that conversation. It's the same advice that I would give to people in their job searches is just be open to conversations. You never know where they're going to lead. You're going to learn something new about someone, and don't be afraid to take the chance on the person who isn't 100% match, simply for the fact that you're going to build more loyalty and allegiance through challenging someone and helping them grow in their career, opposed to getting the person who's done it for 10 to 15 years and maybe isn't going to make the big impact on your team or the impact that you're expecting because they already have that experience.
Now, I came into this US business with little to no understanding of American football. What's been the biggest gap in my sporting knowledge that you've observed?
Well, you made up a lot of ground in that category. I think we've got you pretty ingrained into the NFL. Now we need to tackle the college scene. There are some different nuances in the sport there. And then we need to expand your knowledge outside of football, start to get you into baseball. I think American pastime, especially this time of the year, you're getting into spring. I know the season is a little bit delayed given everything that's going on, but there's nothing better than sitting at a ballpark, watching baseball and having a couple of beers outside. There is a lot of strategy behind it, a lot of unwritten rules, and it's just a really fun sport to get to know.
I have to say that you and our marketing director, Donnie Gupton, have been amazing this year in teaching me the nuances of American football. And I have to say, I felt very lucky that I jumped on the 49ers at the start of the season without realizing what an amazing run that they potentially were going to have. And getting all the way to the Super Bowl in your first season of NFL is one that I don't think I'm going to replicate again. So yeah, it was a good ride, and I had a lot of fun and learned a lot. So final question for you, Joe. How do I become a better US sporting citizen?
We got to get you, well, it might just be daily downloads with me on what's going on. It may be getting you, there are a number of different ways that we can go with this, but I think just continuing to learn more about American football as it comes back, again, learning that nuance between, well, so there's more passion in the college game, I think, and you'll hear it in speaking with Donnie. You've heard it speaking with me and Donnie at the same time. NFL is a little bit more business-like. College is where the passion is going to be, and you'll find that a lot of professionals in the U.S., they still have that passion for their college team. So we need to get you more involved there, and get you talking about. I know you saw LSU Alabama when you were over here in the fall, which pair that up with the Niners game that we went to, and I think you hit the apex. And I'm afraid to even bring you back to football. I'm not even going to ask you to come to a Detroit Lions game because. You know, you're looking at the opposite end of the spectrum there. But yeah, I think the biggest opportunity for you is just learning more about college football.
I'm super keen. LSU last year was amazing. I did see a few of their games, and their quarterback was second to none. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about it.
It's going to be a heck of a journey, and I look forward to me and Donnie being able to lead that way and teach you something. It's kind of my passive-aggressive nature for you throwing me into Treasury like this, is I'm going to put you in uncomfortable situations in college football.
Well, thank you very much for coming on today, Joe. Really appreciate chatting to you. For all the listeners out there, please make sure you get in touch with Joe, get in touch with Scotty, get in touch with Kushal. You know, these guys have got a lot going on. You won't see them advertising on job boards. It's all stuff that we're going to approach people that we know, give them the roles that are in line with their aspirations. So make sure that you get in touch. I'm happy for you to reach out to me as well. Just make sure you do it in Aussie hours rather than the US. Okay, mate. Speak to you soon.
Thanks, Simon. Appreciate it.